Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. How are you today? Hope you're having a wonderful week. It is Thursday, and today I'm going to do something a little different than my normal show. I usually have some segments and stuff to talk about, but sometimes I have an interview. Today is one of those days. Today I have a really great guest, and we've been talking about getting him on the show for a little while, and finally he can join me. His name's Adam Coleman, and he wrote a book called Black Victim to Black Victor. And we're going to really delve into it. And I think more people need to hear his message. And welcome to the show, Adam Coleman. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. It's good to have you here. And I think that your message is needed now more than ever. And I was kind of mentioning to you earlier that I'm so sick of this race conversation. It's just so tiresome, right? Because
Yeah.
I'm not sure how old you are. I'm not trying to age you right now on the internet, but I'm in my late 30s. I was born in early 80s, and I was a teenager in the 90s. Well, almost teen, preteen, whatever, and I just was raised I went to a high school that had all sorts of different colors, and there were really cool people and really mean people. And I never like attached a race to it. It was always just like most people were cool, and it's like, then the
Yeah.
bullies, they were bullies. I wouldn't go in like, that's a racist person treating me differently because of my race. It just didn't, I didn't think about race pretty much my whole life. Like, I knew about racism from the past. I know that we, have our history as a country of what we went through and defeated. But never has it been more prevalent in my life than now. And I can't believe it. It's crazy. So, but then I started following you and seeing your message, and I really like it. I really like what you have to say. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself for the people who don't know who you are?
Sure. So basically, like you said, I'm the author of the book behind me, Black
Hmm.
Victim and Black Victor. Um, for all intents and purposes, I'm just the average guy. I'm a cultural war junkie. Just was watching everything, especially the past, I want to say 3, 4 years, really watching and seeing what's going on and really being open to different thoughts and ideas and wide political spectrum. Um, and I would also classify myself as a former liberal.
Okay.
Um, and today, I'm politically independent. If you were to put me on some sort of scale, I'm probably center right. But I'm relatively open. I'm open to being wrong as well. Um, but I decided to write the book, especially after watching everything that broke down when it came to George Floyd and
Hmm.
the conversation that was happening. And like you said, you know, talking about race can be tiresome, emotional, but it gets to a point where it's boring. And obviously, I have my book, and I spent was it 9 months writing it and talking about race. And part of the reason why the conversation about race is boring is because it's the same points made over and over and over.
Yeah.
Uh, we're oppressed. No, you're not. We're oppressed. No, you're not. It's the this isn't logical. This is logical. It's the same conversation that goes back and forth.
Yeah.
And so, what my book attempts to do is have a different conversation, talking about principles, concepts. The central theme of the book is talking about my life as a child
Okay.
and the impact on single parent homes. One of the mistakes that I always thought that
Hmm.
the right would make, like they're right, the number one issue for black families, I'm sorry, for black people in America is the breakdown of the family. But they just kind of stop there. And I kind of understand, it should be self-evident as to why.
Yeah.
But, I think when people say the same thing over and over, it gets used or it gets seen as a talking point. So what I wanted to do is use my life story as an example as to why single parenthood is detrimental to children. Um, and I wrote it in a way where I'm almost using Black Americans as like a case study because I
Yeah.
go in and out of talking about Black Americans and just people,
Can you answer?
children.
Can you answer that question right now?
Which question
Why?
exactly?
Like, why? Why is it? because you said you used your own life as an example of why it's
Mhm.
break or why it's important or why it's affecting, and my instinct is to go, well, why is it then? Well, what is it about what in your life that you
Mhm.
experienced, that you were able to bring to the book?
So, just maybe it also helps to give like a little bit more background about my life.
Sure, yeah, please do.
Yeah. So, I grew up single parent home.
Hmm.
My father was always married, just never to my mother. So I
Hmm.
was born out of wedlock, but out of someone else's wedlock as well.
Okay.
Um, so there was no real possibility of my father being involved in my life. We moved around a lot. Before the age of 18, I've lived in 4 states and lived in multiple towns within these states as well.
Yeah.
Um, before the age of 18, I was homeless twice, and I was homeless once as an adult for a short period of time. Um, so there was a lot of instability when it came to that. Um, it's incredibly important for children to have some sort of stable functioning within their life.
True.
The people I've met that have been extremely well adjusted have had stable parents, stable home, both parents in the home. And granted, there is no guarantee. Obviously, you could have two toxic parents raising you in the same house.
True.
So I think it's very obvious. I'm not advocating for, regardless of the parenting style or the quality of the parents, they should always be there. What I'm advocating for is two healthy parents being within the home and proper family planning and marriage.
Yeah.
So, but to go back a little bit, what I experienced was a lot of instability. What I also experienced is feeling extremely vulnerable, um, being highly influential. I was born in Detroit, and I've asked my mom this. What would have happened if we never left Detroit? Because I know I would have been one of those kids. You know, and I would have been caught up in something because having that strong figure within my life, um, like a male figure, especially for a young boy, to help protect me from terrible outside influences wasn't there. I sought for attention.
Yeah.
I sought for acceptance. And granted, I left Detroit at a very young age, but we moved around a lot. But that feeling stuck with me until my teenage years. Um, it was very important that girls tried to like me, and I tried to do everything to get accepted. That stuck with me into my adult years. Having low self esteem or having my esteem linked with how people saw me. Um, all of these different things, and I kind of talk about the the positives of having a father figure. And I think that within our society, we kind of downplay the importance of fathers. Um,
Absolutely.
and I guess for myself, I had my son at the age of 21,
Hmm.
and it was kind of like a crash course to kind of figure this out, especially not having my father in my life. So I would say, especially when my son started reaching towards the teenage years, he's 16 now, but I really saw how influential I was for my son. Someone told me one time, your son watches you. And I never really picked that up. And I started kind of paying attention. And they mean it literally, but also figuratively, he's watching what you're doing.
Hmm.
And, I went through periods of my life where, I not like an existential crisis, but just like really trying to figure out what I want to do with my life. What's the purpose? Why am I here? And what do I want to leave behind for my son? What kind of legacy I want to leave behind?
Yeah.
And so, a lot of the things I do now, my son's old enough where I can like share with him. He's read my book, and he really felt. He obviously knew what my childhood was like, but the way I described my childhood, he had never heard it in that particular way.
Yeah.
And he said he got emotional reading it too. So, a lot of the things I do, I keep in mind that my son may read this or my son may see this. And I want my son to also be proud of his father and to have me as an example of being a man when he grows up,
Yeah.
and the type of behavior that he wants to um, exhibit in this world. What kind of footprint do you want to leave, in this life? And I think these are all the type of questions that I think a healthy father figure would help to provide for his child. In the book, I kind of say that, the father is like your compass, right?
Okay.
He's there to help you steer in the right direction, right? He's
Hmm.
not going to pick you up and carry you there. He's going to help guide you there.
Yeah.
And what I felt like throughout my childhood was a broken compass where I was just all over the place. It was hard for me to focus. I barely graduated high school, not because I'm dumb, but because I couldn't focus.
Yeah.
I didn't have the proper discipline to do certain things. And these are not, things that you can't fix, obviously.
Hmm.
But these are things that a child should be able to be adjusted with. And when you don't have that in your life as a child, you're left trying to pick up the pieces as an adult. So
That's a really good way of putting that. The father is like the compass, and
yeah,
it instantly pops in my head. It's almost like the mother is the ship that protects you from the elements and protects you from the harsh weather out there, but keeps you afloat. But without a compass, you don't know where you're going. You don't
yeah,
have like a direction to go. At least you're safe on the ocean, but without that purpose, that direction to go, you really need both. You
right,
can't just be floating in the water with a compass, but if you don't have a compass, you don't know where you're going. You're going to be lost at sea. We
yeah.
really need the balance between the two. Um,
And
yeah.
there's also my book is somewhat traditional, but I don't really like see it that way. I
Hmm.
just look at what works, and I look at what makes sense.
Yeah.
And you know, if I see a large group of people that don't have their fathers within their lives, um, I use my wife as an example. My wife grew up in Brooklyn,
Okay.
and in the 80s, all black neighborhood, and she never really thought about it until I started writing the book, and we were just having these conversations. But in her neighborhood, she really thought about it, and there's only one family that had both parents within the home, and they happened to be from the Caribbean.
One family.
One.
Wow.
And so, including herself, she didn't grow up with her father.
Okay.
So when she really thought about it, and she brought this up, but it's to tell you that how normal that felt to her. It wasn't even like a question. it,
Hmm.
it was just everybody was like that. Now, granted, this is her particular neighborhood that she experienced, but statistically, it's very abundant that it's happening, and it's happening across racial lines increasingly, right?
Agreed.
So we're kind of like the canary in the coal mine, but um, if you want to get some sort of answer as far as different things that are affecting Black Americans, whether it's economically, right? I had a conversation with a relative of mine who is more on the, there is oppression, there's things that's preventing Black people from economically doing more. And I said,
Hmm.
okay, let's say you're right. Does it do us any good if we don't family plan, right? Or let's
Okay.
look at the math of it.
Hmm.
In this day and age, most households need two parents for economic reasons.
True.
If we're growing up in separate homes, that means that our household income earner is one. Two is better than one. When you look at average household income for Black Americans in comparison to white Americans, I don't think it's half, but it's not close. And that's because we're in separate households a lot of the times.
Mm.
More than half of us are in separate households. So, you know, these are just basic numbers and basic way of just kind of viewing things. If we don't have a family, how do we have a community?
Yeah. How can you build? How can you pass down, that I don't want to say wealth, but that community, I guess, is the best way to put it, right? You build a community up, and then suddenly wealth uh, arrives, right? Because you're not struggling anymore. You've got help from others. Um, yeah, it's so you're actually moving forward now with another
Mm.
book, and I kind of
Yeah.
I don't want to stop this conversation because I feel like
No.
it leads right to it, right? Because
Mhm.
this is about victimhood,
Mhm.
right? And now tell me about your next book. Tell me what what your next project is.
So, not to give too much away,
Okay.
because it's
Sure.
it's deeper than what I'm about to tell you, but
Okay. Okay.
essentially, it's about saviorhood.
Hmm.
right? So obviously the first book is about victimhood, the mentality of the victim, right?
Yeah.
But even within my current book, there's a chapter where I talk about I'm trying to remember the exact title, but the liberal savior, right? But or
Mm.
you can average it out just saying like the savior complex, and I give
Yep.
some personal stories as to how that kind of comes into play. But essentially, I outlined that it is a relationship between the victim and the savior they're
Okay.
dependent on each other. You know, the victim needs a savior and vice versa. The savior needs the victim to feel special, to feel needed and wanted, and to feel a sense of somewhat authority. You know, they pedestalize themselves, right?
Okay.
The
Yeah.
victim needs advocacy, right? And that's what you see a lot of times when you see activists go out and they're always talking about their voice. They want their voices heard, right? They always want someone to either hear them, advocate for them. It's a constant victim type of mindset. The savior
Hmm.
doesn't do that. The savior speaks on behalf, right? So you hear phrases like, you know, yeah, I'll just make up like a character, but like as a white woman, you know, I don't know what it's like to be a black person, but I want to bring awareness to, right. She's attempting to
Mm.
speak for
Yeah.
the image of the black person who is a constant victim.
Right.
So it's that kind of mindset, and the savior complex. You know, I've been looking at this for months and thinking about this. The savior complex shows in a multitude of ways, right? And I've kind of classified the saviors as two types of saviors. So there's the moderate savior and there's the extreme savior,
Okay.
right? The moderate savior is someone who's highly empathetic, right? And there's someone who could be pushed in that particular direction, right? So maybe they didn't have that particular complex before, but for some reason, something happened and they grabbed onto it. So when you see the anti-racist movement, I truly believe a lot of these people who repeat the same lines over and over of doing the work, wanting to be an ally, all these things, I really do think that they have good intentions, right? They
Agreed.
are highly empathetic people who are
Hmm.
giving a solution, right? And they believe that there's a grand problem. And so the absence of any other solution, they're going to grab onto the anti-racist solution, right? And so
Yeah.
now they're going to move forward, but what they're not realizing is that they are being extremely condescending, and they've
Yep.
self-promoted themselves within society to save other people. And so that's the moderate. On the extreme, you have someone who is the type of person who's always had that, you know, that sense of grandeur about
Mm.
themselves. They're always a bit narcissistic, but now they have an ideology to kind of push forward, right?
And a purpose,
And a
right?
purpose,
Yeah.
exactly. So they're not apologetic for speaking on behalf of me, right?
Yeah.
They're absolutely certain that they need to do this, right? And they don't actually like the victim that they're saving either.
Oof. Yeah.
And so and it's actually the funny thing is, as much as the people that you might see who are the victims who are advocating for saviors to speak for them,
Hmm.
the victims don't like the saviors either,
Hmm.
right? They're incredibly uh I'm trying to think of the best word. They really don't like that they need them, but
Yeah.
they feel that they do, right? And the saviors pity the victims, but they'll speak on behalf of them because it makes them look good.
This feels like a problem that is just going to get exponentially worse. Is that like it comes around and gets worse and worse. I mean, we talk about how um, you know, single parent homes, right,
Mhm.
create this um like you said it yourself about you needed to get validated from others. You had low self-esteem, and you were had a broken compass, so therefore you didn't have that purpose. And now we have, I'm going to just use Democrats telling people, like, because it feels like we're talking about Democrats. I mean, I don't want to like put that label on it, because it's
Right,
not just Democrats. Like, anyone could be put in that savior position. But
right,
when they don't have a purpose, when they're seeking validation, and something goes, here, put this night suit on. It's bright and white, and you can protect people, and that could be your new purpose in life. Suddenly they're like, oh, all right, I feel good about myself because, as you said, their intentions are good.
Mhm.
Um, I actually had a conversation with my buddy Darth Call, who joins me on Mondays, about do you know who Eric July is?
Yeah, yeah.
So he put out a tweet about how people who put pronouns in their bio are all crazy, and they're all can be dismissed. Eric's really spicy. And Call
Yeah,
was like, I don't like that attitude because I personally know some people, and I actually do too. I'm quoting Call here, and he was saying about how he knows people that they just have good intentions and are thinking that is trying to help. Like, I guess that's would be more the moderate savior, right? The people that are like,
exactly.
oh, this is what we should do. Okay, Black Lives Matter. It's like, well, of course they do. I never doubted it. I don't think that you need. You're trying to convince the world that the majority of people think that they don't matter. And I'm kind of adding another subject in, but it goes hand in hand, right?
Yeah,
It's the same kind of conversation.
exactly. And the other, we're talking in the concept of race, right?
Right.
But there's no limitation to it. As long as someone thinks that there's an existential crisis at hand, they're
Hmm.
going to seek a solution, especially if they're highly empathetic. So you can look at, we call COVIDians, right? The pull up
Yeah.
your mask, those type
Hmm.
of people,
Yep.
and I think some of them mean well. And obviously, there are the extreme ones who will chase someone around the store and
Yep.
make sure that everybody has their mask up, right? Those are the tyrants, those are the extremists, right?
Yeah.
They feel that it's their duty to report you, right? Uh, so those are on the extreme end, but the empathetic people, and it's not completely unwarranted, see that people are dying from COVID. And so, yeah, I understand, especially when the media portrays that half the people who get COVID are dying, right?
Right.
And so, if you're a highly empathetic person and you see an existential crisis, and then someone gives you a solution, i.e., the government or Fauci or whoever gives you a line of solutions that you need to follow guidelines,
Yeah.
then you're going to start doing that. And the other kind of thing, and it's interesting, James Lindsay brought this up in his conversation with Joe Rogan. These types of people, while they might be highly empathetic, they're obsessives, right? So they're constantly obsessing over these things,
Yeah.
and so they just kind of spiral into this position of saviorhood, and they don't even realize it. Um, so that's that. You can look at someone who's like saved the planet, right? The extreme people, the on the was it the climate change people, right?
Yeah.
Who want to change themselves. They really, I think many of them truly believe that the earth is about to come to an end and they have to do something, right?
Yep.
And I feel really bad for them because they don't see how irrational they're behaving, right?
True.
And so it doesn't matter what it is, like in the context of what's happening these days, whether it's race or COVID, the people are getting pushed into becoming saviors within our society. A lot of it has to do with the media, but also a lot of it has to
Oh
do
yeah.
with the absence of a solution or only just the presence of a singular solution.
and,
One of
and
Yeah,
coupled with the lack of purpose in people's
yeah.
lives, because look at humans right now, especially in the Western culture.
Mhm.
We have water. I walk to my kitchen and fill my water bottle with water, right? It's that easy. I always have access to water. I go to
Mhm.
the store. I can buy all the food I want. I don't need to harvest for the winter time. I don't need to go out there and hunt for hours on end to make sure that I continue to have food on the table.
Yeah.
What is our purpose nowadays? Art. I mean, we really have taken away a lot of the macro dangers in life, right? So now we have these people that are creating problems to worry about, or some of them are legitimate. I'm not saying that not all of them, but for the most part, they're making up things to be mad at or to blame for their own problems. Um, and that lack of purpose, coupled with the media going, here's the answer. Here it
Mhm.
is. Use this power that I'm giving you. And they're like, all right, and then they go full force. And some of them go to the full extreme. And we're seeing that more than ever.
Yeah, absolutely. There's you got me thinking about stuff I'm just starting to write about. But
Mm,
um, one of the things I was having a Twitter space conversation about how did we allow for these people, the most unstable, irrational, disrespectful people, to have such a loud voice? And
true.
the only answer I could really come up with is that we've all become cowards.
Oof. It hurts. The truth sometimes hurts.
You
You're
know,
right, though. You're right. Yeah, I agree with you.
as fortunate as we are, just focusing on America, as fortunate we are in America to, like you said, not have to worry if water's coming out. We have food within abundance. Even
Hmm.
if you are poor, we have fat homeless people and fat poor people, right? There's
Yep.
there's a way for you to survive within our society that didn't exist centuries ago, right?
True.
So, you know, when you have all of these things taken care of, we start worrying about the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, right? And that's why you see all these issues, the most micro of aggressions, to use
Mm.
their term,
Yep.
become macro in their head, right? Because there is nothing else to worry about.
Hmm.
In a society where there's turmoil, war, conflict, you start to see how conservative they become,
True.
how reliant off of each other they become, right? In a society that becomes, exceedingly fortunate, well off, luxurious, people start to separate. They don't need each other, right? Women
Yep.
don't think they need men, and men don't really think they need women, right? But try and go to, well, it's funny I'm bringing this up, but like a place like the Ukraine, right?
Hmm.
They're still strong in their beliefs in religion, and
Yep.
they are very traditional, and they understand that, especially the women understand that they need men, right? It's not a option, right? They need to have men alongside them. They need protection. This is not, it's not the same as, living in America.
Yeah.
Maybe Ukraine is not the best example of that, but I'm somewhat familiar with Ukraine. But there's poor places, and they understand how important family is and how
Yep.
important structure is, because the
Community.
community, defying these things leaves you in danger, right?
Yep.
And now we have a society where you don't necessarily have to cherish these things, because danger doesn't come for you, right?
Yep.
You as a man, you can live single in your house. A woman can live single in her apartment, right?
And then add the internet too.
And
And
at the
and and
internet.
and add that whole, because as a society or human race, like we're still adjusting to
Mhm.
having the internet, to having this. I mean, social media networks and what they're doing to our brains and how we're adjusting to it. Like, it's even worse. Like what you just said, pre-internet, it was still kind of coming true where we really didn't need anyone else. Like we could just
Yeah.
survive and be on our own, because everything's kind of taken care of. We don't have to like group up and work together to thrive. And then you add the internet where people are getting their likes and their friends from all over the planet. They can isolate and still be social, but when it comes down to it, they're still alone,
Yeah.
with no community, right?
Right. They've discovered artificial happiness.
Hmm.
Uh, it. I'll tell you, it's as someone who's newly married. It.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I'm 37. I'm single. In and out of relationships throughout my adult years.
Okay.
It's a different feeling, right? It's a different feeling to know that you can rely off of someone, and it's also a different feeling when you know that you're reliable to your partner. You know,
Hmm.
I had tweeted the other day. One of my favorite things about being married is being put in the position to protect my wife.
Yep.
And I never really had that sense, with my girlfriends per se. I wouldn't put them in danger, but I didn't have that same sense of necessity. I think that's
Yeah.
the best word. And I don't think we see things in that particular manner. I think that's part of the reason why people kind of poo-poo marriage.
Yeah.
They don't see the necessity in having each other, right? And I understand there's, from a male's perspective, there's risk, there's financial risk, people are worried about divorce, but that should only mean that you plan it and you vet your partner as best as you possibly can.
Yeah.
Um, my wife knows I vetted her, right? I
Okay.
asked her one particular question, and if she answered it in a different way, I was considering saying goodbye to the relationship, and we were into the relationship.
Can you
And
can you share what that question was?
yeah, I asked her, does she plan on living in this area for the rest of her life? Because I
Okay.
didn't want to live in this area for the rest of my life. And I
Okay.
didn't want that to be that's a big thing. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
I don't want to sit here and be miserable living somewhere I don't really want to live. And she's happy as all can be. I don't want that to be an area of conflict. I think that's something really big.
Okay.
So I asked her in a way, because I was planning on asking her to marry me, and I asked her
Yeah.
in a way that wouldn't give that away, but it was incredibly important to understand that. And I think it's
Yeah.
important for both of us. Last thing you want to do is get involved with me and then, dealing with my mood, and years go by and I'm resentful, or anything like that.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
I think it's incredibly important for men to understand that if you have an abundance mindset, then you won't settle for someone who's not on the same page as you, right?
Yeah.
So it's not about finding the hottest chick or anything like that. It's about finding someone that needs you,
Yeah.
right?
Well, and
And
also finding someone that will allow you to be you
yeah,
100%. It's
right.
like there is such thing as sacrifice, but that's different than changing yourself. Don't
Yeah.
you can't change yourself. I've had relationships where I've made sacrifices in a way that I wasn't fully me, and that resentment came into play, and I know it that it was we were both doing it, and then
Mhm.
eventually we started fighting, and there it is. And also, you said, like, these people nowadays look at marriage like, nah, I don't really need it, and it's almost like everything in their lives is like that. We don't
Yeah.
cherish things anymore. Oh, like phones. So my phone's right here. Like a quick example, right? I'm just gonna get the new phone. Yeah, just get the new phone. Well, why? Why do you get the new phone? Because you don't care about this phone. People don't care about their anything, right? There's no value in any stuff that they have. They just replace it. Same with marriages. Divorces through the rise, like whatever. Just I'll meet someone else instead of waiting for that one person. Like you said, that you never you don't settle for anything less than what you know is going to be that partner in life that you can rely on and that can rely on you.
Yeah.
Really, it's missing nowadays. It's really sad.
Yeah, I agree. And, in my case, I knew that I wanted to marry her after about 3 months
Okay.
because, obviously I'm a little bit older at the time.
Mhm.
So I'm experienced. I've been in bad relationships. And so I know exactly what I'm looking for,
Yeah.
right? And what qualities I'm looking for, qualities of substance. And I think sometimes people, I mean, to be frank, I think a lot of guys just marry the first woman that has sex
Ge
with them consistently.
Yeah, or just gives them the validation that they have been thirsting for.
Yeah.
That low self-esteem that we mentioned earlier. It's like that is prevalent. And it isn't just in Black communities, it's everywhere. It's
Yeah.
I know friends of mine personally through life that um had that issue, married the first girl that they were with, or planned on marrying them, bought them a ring, and then the woman, the girl took the ring and sold it, and horror stories, and it's really sad, there the lack of self-esteem. And you know what? Now that I'm thinking about it, their father wasn't in the home.
Yeah.
That's I didn't even think about it, but now I'm looking back. I'm like, wow, yeah, huh? That's a thing. Look at that.
Yeah. And you know what? And I'll admit for myself, when you're that guy, um, I think for a lot of women, you start to become like a turnoff, kind of like a little bit repulsive because you're kind of needy, you know.
True.
I think a lot of women want to feel like they have to earn the right to be with you rather
Yeah.
than you're just like trying to give it away, right? They don't really respect that so much.
Yep.
If you're, like people say, the nice guy, right? I've been that guy. If you're the nice guy who's always doing above and beyond, right? For
Hmm.
what reason? Oh, just because you exist. After a while, they don't really respect that. Women don't generally like unearned praise.
Yep.
And it's a type of thing that signals to them desperation. you
Yep.
know and then that also signals to them, why is he being so nice,
Hmm.
right? And I used to think about, like, I've heard that phrase being stated, and I used to think, like, don't you want someone who's nice? But the
Nice guys
more I
finish
really,
last.
right, the nice guys finish last. But
Hmm.
sometimes they should, right? Sometimes those guys are dangerous. Sometimes those guys are swindlers. uh
Yep.
you know and I understand it from a deeper level as to why, instinctively that's a little bit repulsive for women, for a guy to be so desperate for you to be there.
And
um
catering.
right. um y- you know I remember, I'll tell you a quick story. When I
Sure.
was a teenager, there was this kid, his name was Tito, and braces, pimples, right? He was not an attractive guy. The girls could not leave him alone. And he used to, like, I couldn't understand it. Right? Attractive girls just would not leave him alone. And I remember one day I asked him, like, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, I just don't care. Right. And I used to interpret that, oh, he doesn't care about the girls. But
Right.
he actually meant was, I don't care if they like me or not. Like, I'm just doing what I want to do. And
Hmm.
the girls like that.
Yep.
uh and it's that kind of thing where, almost like, if you can take it or leave it, then that means that you must be someone of value, right?
Yep.
But if you're a guy who's desperate, like, please like me, it's worrisome.
Yep.
Why
And
is he doing
standards
that?
too. Like
Right.
if I show, whether obviously or not, that I have standards, like my
Hmm.
standards are here. And hey, if you don't meet those standards, then why am I here? Right.
Yeah.
It adds that, like, I got to actually prove myself. Then I've got to step it up a notch. And if both sides are doing that, like keeping those standards, because it's not just one sided, right? It's a good relationship is a balance between the two. I mean,
Hmm.
granted, the man, is they claim alpha doesn't exist, which is ridiculous. You look at all animals in the world, out there's an alpha male, um, which, I think that being alpha is that attraction. To me, right, to define alpha is take it or leave it. Like that the pimply guy, that was
Hmm.
an alpha in high school. If he didn't care in high school what other people thought, that's alpha energy right there. Like, I
Yeah.
don't care. I'm gonna do me. I'm gonna do me no matter what, and that's it. That's
Yeah.
huge.
Exactly. And to switch it, because we were talking about marriage a little bit. I think one of the big issues, if we were to kind of link it a little bit to race, but it's happening overall,
Hmm.
is feminism. Um, you know,
Yep.
in the book, I'm very honest when I talk about how a lot of Black women, and this is not to say every single one or anything like that, but it's
Yeah.
a mentality that exists. And if you were to ask them, are you a feminist? They would say, likely, no, they're not, right? But their behavior displays
Interesting.
itself as a feminist, right?
Hmm.
There is a level of conflict between the sexes within the race that is different than other races or other cultures. It's at least from where I'm sitting, like, I'm
Yeah.
watching it, and it's different, right? There's a level of distrust, there's a level of animosity, even though at the same time they feel that they need them to a
Hmm.
degree, right? It's a very weird situation. But um, if you believe that you can do it all by yourself, you don't need a man, right? These are phrases that are thrown around.
Yeah.
That you know, I'm a boss, I'm a diva, right? These are very
Queen.
queen. Thank
Mm.
you.
Mm.
These are very uh, almost egotistical, pick me up lines, right?
Yeah.
And all of them signal independence, right?
True.
And there's songs about being an independent woman and all these different things. They're not signaling marriage. They're not signaling relationships, or at least a healthy relationship, right?
Right.
Um, there's no worry per se about having a child out of wedlock because, well, I can do it by myself. I can work. No man has to sign for me or allow me to do whatever I want to do, right? And then we have our
Mhm.
laws set up where the children go with the mother by default. And,
Yep.
she has to be a pretty horrible mother to have the kids taken away from given to the father.
Yeah.
So, it's all these different things. It's kind of culturally um, that it's happening over and over and over, and I can't help but to see it. I asked my mom why didn't she get married, right? Or why did she choose my father?
Yeah.
Because all intents and purposes, there was no reason. Like if she actually wanted to get married, she wouldn't have picked him. He was already married.
True.
But the fact is, she wanted to do what she wanted to do.
Yep.
That it's as
Y-
simple as that.
Yep.
And while people could say, oh, that's your mom or whatever, I'm like, okay, that's fine. But I'm looking around me. I'm looking at the media that's being pushed towards Black Americans, especially Black women. I'm
Yeah.
watching the rhetoric that comes from certain Black women. I'm watching narratives. I'm watching all these things, and man, does it sound familiar, you know. And I can't help but to link it to the feminist ideology or the feminist movement,
Mhm.
even down to the fat acceptance movement. You know, it's troubling to say that the fattest demographic in America is Black women.
Is it?
And yeah, it's about, if I remember correctly, it's about 80% of Black women are at least listed as overweight. I think I might be messing up the statistics, but it's well over
Yeah.
half that are considered obese.
Okay.
And people want to argue about the BMI and all that stuff, but regardless, it's the same scale for all the demographics, and
Yeah.
theirs is the highest. And then you have the fat acceptance movement, which, just pay attention now to it. Most of the time, they use Black women.
Hmm.
Was it "This Is Healthy,"
Yeah.
cover?
That
It's a
campaign. Yeah, I remember
That
that.
campaign is a Black woman, right?
Mhm.
The feminist movement is using Black women on a consistent basis, especially for the fat acceptance movement.
Yeah.
And while this is on the extreme, this is like the activist level. It's something that trickles down from the activists and trickles down into just the everyday culture. The idea that men, or most Black women want to be with Black men, that Black men are a threat, that threaten their safety or threaten their independence, or not willing to sacrifice, not willing to bend or break for anybody, right?
Mhm.
um, and there's this one thing about feminists and Marxists in general, but feminists, there's this obsession with power.
Okay.
And so I start seeing how people look at their relationships in regards to a power dynamic, right?
Right.
And I don't see like my wife, like I'm overpowering my wife,
Right.
or we're battling for supremacy
Dominance
or
in
dominance.
the
Yeah,
relationship. Yeah.
right. That's a very like cynical way to look at a relationship between two people in a home.
Right.
But there's a feeling of power. And when they say, well, I want to wait, or just, there's a very cynical look about relationship. Well, what if he does this, right? That's kind of like a pessimistic approach to a relationship. Bad
Right.
things happen all the time, but to enter something that could be extremely beneficial to you with well, I'm just going to prepare just in case, like, that seems kind of strange.
Yeah.
um
It means
but
you're not
there's
all in,
you're not all in.
So no, it will never work if that's the case.
Right. So I think that for a lot of women, marriage isn't really sought after.
Yeah.
uh and granted, like I said, it's a canary in a coal mine. I see it prevalently with Black women and the Black family dynamic, but it's happening, or it's growing more and more within other races, other cultures within America.
Where do you
um
think that came from though? Like what started that? So the feminist movement, like that started creeping in and creating that distrust with guys. Is that where it started?
I try not to go too much into the past because I'm not a historian or
Okay.
anything like
Yeah.
that.
Well, what do
So
you think though?
I think that the feminist movement had a big impact, a bigger impact than we thought. I know
Hmm.
people like to go back to like LBJ and the, incentivizing the women to choose
Welfare.
the government over the fathers.
Yep.
That could have, I don't know how impactful that was. Like I know that it could have played a significant role, but I just don't know. Like if you put percentages, I have no idea.
Yeah.
But what I will say is this: culture is extremely important, and the
Agreed.
change in culture happens over a period of time.
Yeah.
And so when culture changes, people change. People adapt new ideas and new belief systems and all these different things. If you were to look pre 1960s, I know you probably heard this before, we were married at a higher rate than even white Americans, right?
Yep. I
So,
have heard that.
so my question is, what happened to the culture? And that's kind of the question you're asking.
Right.
Um, but what I can say is, with the common the commonality of the mindset of the feminist ideals when it comes to Black women, the the belief that Black men are a risk to their power within the home, or that even just seeing things as a power dynamic within the home, and outside of race, just looking at the feminist movement, or at least from second wave on, as to what it actually is and what it looks like,
Yeah.
even on the most extreme levels, I can't help but to say, man, the feminist movement has to have some sort of huge impact. Whether it started it or whether it just pushed along a wave that was already in process, I
Yeah.
don't know. But culture changed. And like I said, the story of my wife, it was normal to her.
Right.
Everybody was broken apart. And so when culture changes and things become normalized, you don't question it anymore. So
Yeah.
which makes someone like myself seem like an outlier, or seem like I'm chastising, or uh,
Wrong speak.
I'm wrong speaking,
Wrong speak.
or I hate Black women, or I hate Black people, or you get all this derogatory stuff, and actually I really care. My book was not written from a place of anger, it's from a place of like caring. Like,
Yeah.
I'm worried that this is the situation that is happening on a consistent basis. I'm worried that nothing is happening to change it, right? I'm worried that people know that there's something wrong here, but they don't say anything because they're afraid of having their Black card pulled.
What do we do to change it? How do we make a difference? What can I do? I've been told in the past few years that silence is violence, and that I need to shut the f up because I'm a white guy that doesn't have any say in this situation.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm not necessarily just talking about myself, but like anyone can. What can anyone do? What can you do? Like, what can we do to get to these people that are stuck in their ways, and see people like you and go wrong speak, or call you an Uncle Tom, or any one of the labels that they put on the people that just don't go along with the narrative.
If you're talking about specifically Black Americans and changing the culture, I honestly believe it has to come from within, right?
Okay.
So either things change, or it sounds weird to say, but it self-destructs. Things will just keep getting worse.
It's really sad.
And yeah, but at the same time, I don't think people coming in, swooping in, and trying to save them helps at all. And it's made it worse. And when I look at things that happened in the past, the attempts to save the Black family, or the attempts to save Black Americans, or whatever it is,
Yeah.
I see things getting worse after the fact.
Yeah.
So, I truly believe that Black Americans are just as capable as anybody else to overcome certain situations, to overcome certain dynamics. And much
Yeah.
like how I see people who are like of an extremist mindset, you can't change their mind, right? The contradictions have to build up to the point where they just say, none of this makes sense.
Yeah.
And I'm actually, I'm a little bit of an optimistic person. I'm
I like
actually
that.
seeing a little bit more of people who look just like me, who are starting to question, is this the best way of going about things? Who are starting to, whether it be, they could be liberal or whatever, but just saying, you know what, maybe being a single mother isn't the best idea.
Yeah.
you know, some of them are coming to this realization later in life, which is even worse. But I think more and more people are having this particular conversation. I don't know if you've ever heard of Kevin Samuels. I know he's a
Mm,
controversial figure, um, but you know, watching his show is almost like is like watching Dr. Phil to a degree, right?
okay.
You're watching real people have conversations. You're watching, you're seeing patterns,
Yeah.
right? You watch enough Dr. Phil, you see certain patterns, certain same type of problem, same type of resolution, same type of behavior. With Kevin Samuels, he talks to real women who explain their situation, who explain their mindset, where they're coming from, and there are, while he might talk to women who have the same mindset that I'm talking about before, that is detrimental, he is also talking to women who are speaking to him because they're kind of wanting to challenge the way of how they see things,
Yeah.
right? And he's presenting a more traditional mindset. He says, unless you are married, you haven't won yet. I don't care if you've been engaged 5 times, you haven't won yet until you've been married. That's how
Mm,
he measures winning. And he says the same type of thing. You can't have a community with a bunch of single people running around. And so I think, just, and like I said, the people who are watching may know who Kevin Samuels is. I understand he's controversial, whatever. I watch all types of content. I watch content to understand what people are thinking, what people are saying. And I just see it as like a social project to kind of,
yeah.
to feel the temperature of any particular situation that's going on. So that's how I kind of take his programming. He says some things I agree with, and some things I don't agree with. But it's very interesting to see how there are many Black women. A lot of them tend to be later in their age. Maybe like when I say later in age, not like terribly old, but like late 30s, which is later than a lot of other people start to have families or things of that
Right.
nature. And they're really looking back and like some of them flat out say, I've been lied to. I was told to live my best life and travel and do, focus on my career. And none of that stuff is fulfilling.
Yeah.
And now they've come to the realization that family is extremely important, that getting married is actually something that they wanted to do, but they just put it on the back burner, right?
Yep.
But there's this constant rhetoric that they need to be ultimately independent, so much so to push everything to the side and focus on themselves
Yeah.
to an extreme manner.
And I don't want to take away from the race thing, because I just want to say this feels like that's what, I don't want to say the government, but like the people with the puppet strings on their fingers want
Mhm.
everyone to be independent and
Yeah,
separated. That's really the thing, divided. Because when you have strong communities, strong families that thrive, there's a power there that it doesn't feel like they want. It feels like they want to keep it the way it is and divide further and further and further.
absolutely.
And I don't want it to self-destruct. You've heard uh, good times make weak men create hard times, create soft men, or wait, hard times create uh, strong men create good times create weak men. Where do
Yeah.
you see us right now on that?
Oh, we're definitely weak.
So we are smack dab in the center of weak men.
Yeah.
I agree with
Yeah.
that.
I
I
think,
agree.
I think a lot of men, uh, if we're talking about relationships and how we relate to each other, men and women, I think a
Hmm.
lot of men have sat back and just let it all happen, right?
Yep.
They've conceded any sort of, and this is going to sound like a strong word, but authority, right?
Yep.
You know, any sort of authority within their own families. They sit back and just let it happen. One of the phrases that I cannot stand, and
Hmm.
neither can my wife, is "happy wife, happy life."
Yeah.
Right? I think that's such a detrimental phrase that people make sound like a fact. But if that's
Yeah.
the way you have to live your life within your marriage, that sounds like a terrible life to live.
Well, I hold on. I want to push back a little bit, because
Sure.
I like making my wife happy. I like
Yes.
knowing that, but I, she knows this, that I have a very high standard for my own comfort zone and my own happiness, and I always achieve that. I'm like, I'm not happy, I'm out of this situation, or
Mhm.
well, whatever. I'm generalizing it, but I do like making her happy, and as I'm sure you like making your wife happy. So
Yeah.
the phrase happy wife, happy life as a end all be all is terrible,
Right.
because
That's what I mean.
it's sacrificing yourself. And as I said earlier, you can't change yourself. You can't lose what you need to make yourself happy. And
Right.
that's what guys out there are doing. They're like, whatever to make the wife happy. I'm just gonna go lose a piece of my soul. And it's like, it's so sad to see the guys that are um that 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 have that. I mean, I have friends that have that it's happened to, and I'm like, oh man, like, you used to be so awesome, but you're just this shell of your former self because you married a girl that has the authority. Like you said, in the relationship, is it was a battle and they lost, and it's like, so it's all a
Yeah.
perspective thing, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah, it's the like you said, it's not that men shouldn't make their wives happy. Obviously, they should,
Right,
and vice
right, right, right.
versa.
Hmm.
But it's the implication that, like you said, that guy and there's a guy that comes to my mind that I used to work with who would
Hmm.
say that, and I'm like, your wife is running roughshod over you, man.
Yeah.
Like
Hmm.
he just looked like he was a beaten man, and he just gave up whatever she
Yep.
wants to do. Hey, can you want to do this? Well, if my wife lets me, like she's your
Hmm.
wife, not your mother,
It's only a
right?
matter of time before she doesn't respect you anymore, dude. Like you
Well,
said
yeah.
earlier, it's
Yeah,
gonna happen.
she doesn't. I've never met the woman, right? But
Hmm.
I could just tell by the interaction and behavior, she does not respect you
Yeah,
whatsoever. And
exactly.
and so now you're just coexisting together, and with someone who doesn't respect you at all and who just runs over you. And
Yep.
I don't really think any woman really likes that, to run over their guy. But
Yeah.
hey, if that's what his standards are, then that's what he's getting.
Yep. Agreed.
Yeah.
Uh, Adam, this has been such a good conversation. I don't want to stop it. We're gonna keep going.
Mhm.
I just want to say thank you for coming on the show. This has been such a good conversation. I feel like you're specifically talking about the Black community, but I feel like it's important for everyone to know about this, because
Absolutely.
I can relate to it. And I'm obviously, I don't know if you can tell, I'm not Black, but I relate to it. I know people that have had these issues, that are all skin types, whatever, it doesn't matter. But I think these kind of conversations are how we move forward. I always like to ask myself, how do we move forward? How do we achieve this? I don't know. I think it was Rose W in chat. I saw it pass by. She said something like, Mother Teresa said to heal. I don't. What was it, Rose? To make a change, you love your family. Something like that. It's like,
Mhm.
that's the best you can do, right? You can love your family and give that, like your son, right? You're showing him how to be a good dad, how to be a good human being, and
Right.
giving him a compass that he's going to be an incredible man when he
Mhm.
you know when he grows up. And it's great to hear that. So I have a few super chats. I do want to talk about what's going on with SCOTUS. We'll get into that in a second. But I have a couple. My mom actually super chatted me, and and she has a question for you, Adam. How did you gather research for the book? Did you draw from statistics and historical data, or is it a footprint of your personal journey?
Both. So
Okay.
I do. Granted, one of the things that I didn't want to do was I didn't want to be portrayed as the black conservative who says the same type of things, and
Yeah.
um, I purposely made it a book where, yeah, I talk about some statistics, but a lot of certain chapters I'm doing storytelling, whether it's my story or a fictional story, just to illustrate the ideas that I'm talking about. I do have some statistics, but I'm also talking about a psychological profile, a behavior profile. Um, and while I'm not a psychologist or anything like that, I actually had my book reviewed by a psychologist. I think a couple, and they co-signed at least what I'm saying. They're like, yeah, you're spot on. Like, I'm not
Uh,
saying anything
yeah,
wild or anything like that. I think it's basic psychology, basic human behavior, right?
yeah,
And so I'm just framing it from the aspect of family, framing it from the aspect of child development and what's necessary for them.
yep,
So I tried not to be too historical because, like I said, I'm not a historian. I'm not good when it comes to that stuff, but I have spent 30 plus years of my life being black and looking at different black people and black
observing.
media and observing. Um, and I've come to certain conclusions, and I've had a shift in my mindset and shift in viewpoint as well. So I have a wide variety of experience to kind of come to this particular conclusion that made me feel comfortable about writing this
Yeah,
book. So it's not statistic heavy. It tells a lot of stories, but I use the stories to illustrate a point, right?
yeah,
So it's a very personal book. It's much of my life story. It's very personal, and like you were saying, you you were able to say like, yeah, that's happening with Black Americans, but that's also happening here too, and that's
yeah,
exactly the point.
right.
I didn't write this book just for Black people to read. I wrote this book for everybody to read, so they understand that we have far more in common than we do have different, right? So
Yes,
the issues that we constantly bring up for Black Americans, I'm saying no, these particular issues are the most important. And guess what? It's a growing problem. Everybody's experienced this. I've had people in the UK who've read my book. One particular chapter has made them very emotional because they're like, that was my childhood too. It's like,
yeah,
exactly. So there's so much that I started. I wanted, I don't want to say started. I wanted to illustrate there's so much that we have in common and that we need to understand that we do have in common. And I can't stand the race conversation because all it does is try to find ways that we are different. And
yep,
those micro differences that we have between each other, those small cultural differences that we have between each other are supposed to be so large that me and you could never understand each other.
right.
Right.
I
Right.
can't identify with someone who looks like you. Like, wait,
Right.
what? Why
Right.
not? You know?
Right.
So
My
silly.
my my extra melanin makes it unrelatable to you.
Right.
So that's the kind of the point that I'm trying to make. It's not necessarily trying to like kumbaya. There's terrible people that look like in all colors. There's terrible people in this world. But what I'm trying to say is we need to find that commonality. We need to find that connection between all of us. And I
Hmm.
put some stories within the book talking about experiences where I found some sort of commonality with someone who is completely different than me. And I cherish that relationship because I learned a lot from that particular person. I
Yeah.
think this hyper focus on race and identity has us forgetting that there's so much to learn from people from all over the world. I've been fortunate to meet people from different parts of the world. I have some European friends that I keep in contact with, and there's things from their perspective, from like Germans, you know, their perspective as a German and their way of thinking and their way of seeing things and how they live that's different than in America. And it's interesting to understand where they're coming from, their perspective, and we can learn from that, right?
Yeah.
There's value in talking to people that don't think like me, don't see the world like I do. Even after writing the book, I have my basis of what I believe, but I've actually grown and learned a little bit by talking to people who differed from me a little bit and had an understanding of their perspective, right? So I think there's so much that we can learn, and we're being so close-minded in this particular day and age that
Yeah,
we
we
don't
are.
even want to see each other in that way. Even politically, I there's liberal people that I talk to, even though I don't necessarily consider myself liberal. There's liberal people I talk to, and we
Hmm.
have some sort of commonality that I can understand where they're coming from. All I care is that people are good natured, right?
Yep. I
I
like
don't.
that.
If you're conservative and you're an asshole, I don't want anything to do with you.
Right. Exactly. Cool
Like, it
to
doesn't.
me. I'm cool to you.
Right. So as long as people are respectful, I'll talk to you. I don't care what you look like. But the idea that I need to suspend all belief just so I can, you know, hang out with someone who looks like me or thinks like me or whatever,
Hmm.
like I would never do that. That sounds like a horrible way to approach life.
Yep. Yep. I like it. Robert Wild says, I hope this makes Betty and Diana Francisco smile. I hope your mom is doing better. I wish her the best. Diana, I do hope your mom is feeling better. Um, uh, be blessed, everyone. Crigler Coffee, #1. Thank you. Robert Shaw says, government aid is a drug. It can be addictive. Yes, this is true. Yeah,
Yeah.
and a lot had changed in that era, like the 60s and 70s, with the feminist movement fighting for equal rights to go out and work. Then all the pay cut was cut in half because all the companies were like, well, there's twice as many workers out there. We don't
Yeah.
have to, there's no competition with these jobs. So we're going to just cut all the prices in half. So then suddenly there was this, we have to have both parents working instead of just a one parent, like the father going out and working, the mother staying home and taking care of the kids, which was the tradition. Suddenly, and that affected everybody. And then, then the whole welfare state. So there's a lot that kind of went down to switch into being dependent on the government. And I don't want to be a kept man. I want to earn my keep. I want to risk failure and achieve something awesome, and know that I earned it. And that's just going to feel significantly better.
Yeah.
We need that kind of environment.
And the
Um,
other thing because you mentioned all those different changes that happen, don't forget the growth in the marketing, how we market to people within television, right?
mhm,
Because you no longer had to do it on the radio, then you have television, um, billboards. And now they had a new workforce of women that didn't
mhm.
exist before. Now they're earning their own money. Look at today. I think it's 80% of consumers are women, right?
Really? Wow.
Yeah, right. They're being heavily marketed towards, for all different types of things. They are the consumers in our society. And so marketers understand that. That is why there's such a heavy lean on competing for the eyeballs for women,
Yeah.
right? And catering to women. So that is something that has changed within our society and changed how we view things.
Wow. I didn't. That's a new statistic I never heard before. I might trigger some people out there, but if it's true, it's true. I mean, hey. Darth Call says, "What up, Adam and Adam? Cheers, brothers. What up, what up, Darth? How you doing, man? He's one of my co-hosts on Mondays. It's great." Ricardo says, "What an uplifting conversation, Adam and Adam. It's time society rediscovers the value of family and other traditional values. Greetings from Panama. Very cool.
Hey,
All right, all over the place.
international.
That's very cool." Robert Wild says, "I wanted to do a bag giveaway, but I can't with what I'm dealing with my pug to make up for the bag I won that the post office lost. I will try to do it in a few weeks. Be blessed, Adam. Feel like I should." Well, thank you, Robert. I appreciate that. And it's all good. At least you got the bag that you won. So we got it to you. I know I heard about that whole debacle. Sejong says, "Demolish that like button. The best video on YouTube every day, The Crigler Show. The second, horse kicks tree, farts on dogs, then runs away. Deal with it." I don't know that video, but that sounds hilarious. Um, I don't even want to talk about this stuff, and unless you want to. I just feel like we're having a good, solid conversation that people need to hear.
Mhm.
Um, and I want people to follow you. In the description below, you can follow all of his stuff. It's his Instagram, his Twitter, his YouTube or Facebook page, and also his website, wrongthink.net. And
Oh, wrong speak.
I'm sorry, excuse me, wrong speak. I'm sure a lot of people think that you're wrong thinking, but
Yeah.
it's wrongspeak.net. I apologize.
And
And
also, I'll just throw in there, and I meant to tell you this before I completely forgot.
sure.
Uh, as a terrible host, I'm a host of a Twitter Spaces show that I do every Wednesday.
Okay.
Um, and we record them. So if people go to a goodfaithspace.com, it'll bring you to the YouTube page and they can subscribe to it. We just did a conversation yesterday talking about nihilism and the value of life,
Hmm.
right? These aren't typically conversations people are having on Twitter Spaces.
Okay.
You know, it's usually a complete mess. But I have very well thought out and just genuine conversations with people. We allow people to speak as well to join the conversation too. And it's
Yeah.
just a nice, cordial conversation that explores different ideas. Every week, I have a different panel of people. So it's typically not just myself. And
That's cool.
so, yeah, it's definitely a nice conversation. If people miss it, I put it up on YouTube so they can listen to it. It's audio only.
What do you think about spaces? It's an interesting. I've heard some controversy. I've heard some crazy stuff coming out of spaces, but all in all, good thing, positive.
I think just like most things in life, it's how you make it.
True.
You know,
Yeah.
you can take look at a gun. A gun could be used to protect yourself or to hurt other people. It just depends on how you want to use that tool. Spaces is has been a great place for me
Hmm.
personally to
Yeah.
have an open dialogue with people. And as a host, and and just my temperament, I'm generally calm. As a
Yeah.
host, I'm able to moderate and say by my tone and how we talk, and everybody just follows suit so we can have a nice cordial conversation. It's
Yeah.
a
Civil discourse.
yeah, it's a civil discourse. you know Actually, we had like an impromptu Twitter Spaces conversation that was based off of I don't want to say a conflict, but like a back and forth between what they call the conscious Black conservatives and maybe the more traditional Black conservatives, and they
Yeah.
were arguing about conservatism and how it links to race and all these different things. I had contributed a thread showing my viewpoint in a very fair-minded way
Hmm.
that left people like, I can't really argue what he's saying. I think he's right. That led to, let's have a Twitter Spaces conversation. So I had hosted it. And even though we had people who disagreed on certain things, we were able to have a nice cultural conversation where people were able to express what they think. No one interrupted each other. They just said what they wanted to say. I allowed for the next person to go. I even challenged certain things or just asked questions in a particular way that's of a good faith nature. There's
Yeah.
no gotchas, there's no debating or anything like that. Um, so the whole purpose is to have sometimes tough conversations from a good faith nature. So
That's
that's
awesome.
that's been that's been my experience, but that's how I've decided to use Twitter Spaces. If people want to create their own space so they can yell and rant about stuff, that's up to them. But I find that to be incredibly unproductive, not a great way to learn much of anything. I've learned so much by doing these Twitter Spaces shows. I had a big one with talking about mental health in the military,
Okay.
right? And coming in and saying, listen, I've never been part of the military. I have my viewpoints on mental health, but I want you guys to talk about it. I had Code of Vets on there. I had um, basically everybody. Aja Smith was on there. A bunch of pretty prominent people who had military background. And then we allowed other people to speak. We had well over 100 or maybe 200 people that were in there, and
Nice.
guys who were saying, listen, here's been my experience with the VA. And I didn't realize how much of an issue the VA was for these people, and they're telling their stories. That was such like an eye-opening thing for me as someone who's never been part of the military. I could easily live my life and not know a damn thing about it, but I
Yeah.
chose to have a conversation to understand what is going on. The woman who started Code of Vets is Gretchen Smith. Her father committed suicide. He was a veteran,
Oh, I didn't
and
know that.
yeah, and she made it her mission to help veterans before they make it to that point. So if you're on Twitter, follow Code of Vets,
Definitely
and
follow. She documents everything and shows and very
yeah,
transparent. And
very transparent.
she helps a lot of vets. It's awesome.
Yeah, and that's I don't really donate to charities because most of them are filled with fluff.
Yeah.
But I know when I give my money to her, she says I don't take a penny. All the money goes to the vet, and I appreciate that. So that's why I donate. So
Yeah.
I'll that's a little plug for them.
I want to continue that too. Code of Vets, definitely check them out. I mean, I
Yeah,
have I don't want to plug my own coffee, but I one of my bags of coffee is called Commodore's Reserve, and proceeds go to 22 Until None,
Mhm.
which is a charity about helping military members with suicide, because 22 military members, veterans, commit suicide a day.
Yeah.
And it's called 22 Until None to help these people that have been through a lot and deal with coming back into normal society. Just get them the help that they need. So I Code of Vets is definitely an awesome account on Twitter. Definitely go give them a follow and support for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's see. John Hoyle asks, Adam, are you familiar with Elizabeth Wright?
Elizabeth Wright.
Issues/views, great insights on history. I'm not familiar with her
No,
myself.
no, doesn't sound familiar.
Right on, right on. We should probably check her out. Jason Dixon says, people like the video, also buy the dip. Yeah, Bitcoin's dipping right now, isn't it? Robert Shaw says, you can use a gun to change the TV channel or end a movie production. Oof.
Oh, shoot.
Oof. I see what you did there.
Yeah.
Seichung says, Joe Rogan to be canceled because of wrong-thinking guests. The thing is, he lets any guests on. He just nods and prods and generally lets them talk. Yeah, that whole anti-Joe Rogan thing is crazy, because I mean, even the Surgeon General of the United States is trying to get him censored, and it's like, if you don't like what is being said, offer counter information. Prove the narrative wrong. Prove what they're saying is false. Not just say it's wrong. Wrong speak. Wrong speak. This guy wrong speak over here. Cancel him. Like, we can't have this. Like, that's the whole attitude is, it's tiresome, because we need to know what is wrong to know what is right.
Yeah.
We need a comparison. We need to see it. We need to have freedom of speech. There's freedom of speech for a reason. And First Amendment is absolutely necessary. Adam,
Yeah,
what a great conversation today. So I'm just sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. I was going to say it's detrimental when people convince others that information is dangerous or deadly.
Yep.
That is an extreme take for someone giving their opinion.
Yep.
And that was never, as a former liberal, I say that before, but as someone, I really and truly believed in freedom of speech.
Yep.
I remember the old wild west of the internet, where crazy people were all over the place, and you just ignored them, right? Because we all,
wow,
who'd have thought that concept? Just ignore crazy people.
Yeah.
Right. There are white supremacists that existed on the internet. Yeah. Legit white supremacists. Just ignore them. Right. And that was the thing. We all did. Information was not dangerous. Right. The absence of information is dangerous.
Exactly.
The idea that you need to control information, because all this about Joe Rogan, it's not about information. It's not about, people are giving misinformation, right? Misinformation is code for censorship.
Yep.
Right? And they want to control the narrative. There's somehow this push to try and censor podcasts, right? They're not regulated by the FCC. Go screw yourself. But this idea that we should do something about Joe Rogan is clearly by people who've never listened to Joe Rogan.
True.
like literally, he'll talk to anybody.
And
he'll talk about all types of stuff. He's probably one of the most reasonable, rational people, and he still considers himself a liberal, right?
Yeah, true.
And that's why I know when people attack Joe Rogan, I say, A, you've never listened to him, and B, there's something else that you want, right? Joe Rogan is an avatar to something else that they think is happening. So they understand that he platforms people that they think are speaking incorrectly or conservative minded or whatever, just like how they go after Jordan Peterson.
Yep.
Jordan Peterson got big because when you actually listen to him, he's a very rational and very caring and conscious person.
Absolutely. Yep.
But when Michael Eric Dyson goes up and says, "You're a mean white man," and people laugh at Michael, it's like, what are you talking about? This guy is one of the most calm,
Mm-hmm.
and rational. You know, I mean, he's, don't get me wrong, he's been under stress before, and he's probably lashed out a little bit,
I've seen it
but
a couple times, but
he's seen it a couple times.
but
But
he but he
he,
doesn't attack.
right, he's not.
He
Yeah,
he's defending articulately and appropriately,
right.
right? It's an appropriate response when he does get a little heated. Um he really does a great job of explaining why they're wrong, or
Hmm.
why I don't want to say right or wrong, but his perspective, right? Because that's all what he's doing is like, I'm giving you my perspective, and also it's backed by all these facts of
Hmm.
that has been documented for his throughout history. Um, yeah, it's censorship is real and it is a problem. Wow.
Yeah, yeah. When they start attacking reasonable, rational minded people who are open
Hmm.
to discourse, that's when you know it's not about the information.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly. I got one more. Jason Dixon says, from a Marine veteran, thank you. But we knew what we were signing up for. If we can't handle it, it's our time to go. It's our time. Don't be sad for me. Well, I'm not sad for you, Jason. I want to just support, and help. I recognize the sacrifice it takes to, go into the army and serve something other than yourself. You're serving the society, you're serving the country, you're serving me.
Yeah.
So I just give some respect. So but that is our show. Adam, what a great conversation. I got to have you come back again. I feel like we were just scratching the surface of a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
You have your eye on a specific part of society, and it's very well said, well spoken about all of your experiences. And I actually have your book. I haven't read it yet, but I do have a copy. I have so many books that I've got to get through. But now
It's all good.
I really want to dig into it. But please go give him a follow and check out his book. You can find it at wrongspeak.net. I said it this time correctly.
That's
It's
all right.
Black Victim to Black Victor. And you have do you have a title for your new book, or you gonna?
I'm
It's
not going to
coming.
give that away.
It's coming soon. I almost got it. Maybe next time. But thank you for joining me, Adam. It's been a great conversation.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
And I'm going to give you the camera for a second and just tell people where they can follow you, what your future plans are, and whatnot. So here you go.
Yeah. So people can follow me on primarily Twitter. I've become extremely active on there for good and bad reasons. But you can follow me at wrong_speak on Twitter. You can follow me on Instagram, wrong_speak, Facebook. I believe it's wrong speak Adam. So you can find me all over social media, including Getter. I'm on Getter as well. Look for wrong_speak. And I'm constantly speaking my mind and writing articles on wrongspeak.net. If anybody wants to write an article, it's a open platform for people to express themselves, to write from an intellectual mindset. I don't really censor people. I just hope that people write stuff that's very conscious and just thoughtful. That's basically it. But I have no problem with controversial topics. So people can reach out to me, just fill out the contact form. I'll receive them. We'll have communication and help you publish.
That's awesome.
Yep.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on again, and thank you for joining in and listening to Adam's chatting about life. So I will see you guys tomorrow, Friday. Of course, it's jam night. You guys know the deal. I will be jamming and talking about a few different things. You know how I do. But all right. Have a good night. See you guys next time.